Shalom. Hello, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 23 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. We're doing it every day. Our podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and our Let's Start Healing podcast channel on YouTube. And I also want to invite you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, send me an email at our Let's Start Healing podcast at gmail.com. That's Let's Start Healing Podcast at gmail.com. So send me a note. Let me know what you think of our podcast. If there's any particular topic that you would be interested in us covering. And also, I want to invite you to subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you are listening on. So our guest today has me in a grateful state of mind. She talks a lot about, in our conversation, about how grateful she is to have been brought through some really life-challenging events. Her name is Joan Pressman. Joan is a senior citizen, and she will share a few bits of wisdom with us. She'll share her Jewish faith and her spiritual path. And as I said, she will share gratitude. And our conversation has me reflecting on audio and video recordings that I've listened to and watched of Wayne Dyer as he talks about gratitude. And one of them that stays with me is how he talks about how we should say, how can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve to the universe instead of gimme, gimme, gimme? And how we should be grateful for what we have, and how we know that we have enough and that we always do have enough is to be in the present moment. And if we're here in the present moment, then we know that we're okay right now. And I have so much to be grateful for at this point in my life. And one day I will share all the reasons why and all the things that I am grateful for. But sometimes I just simply, in my prayers and meditation, say thank you. I just say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll thank God for his perfection. For me and my spiritual path, which the beauty of our podcast is all of our paths are not the same. So for my personal spiritual path, I will thank God for his perfection. I'll thank the Holy Spirit for being the voice for God, for being healing energy. I thank Jesus for being the atonement and atoning for everything or anything that I think that I've done in error. I just try to stay in a place of gratitude. One time I was, not that long ago, I was feeling in lack, and I just went into a space of everything that I was grateful for, and it really just shifted me right out of that negative space. So, as I said, Wayne Dyer comes to mind because he talks about how if we say, how can I serve? How can I serve? The universe will in turn say to us, or bring that energy back to us, how can I serve? How can I serve? And the universe will serve us to our highest good. And quite a few guests on our podcast, they've mentioned this prayer that is about serving and about being truly helpful. And I've read it before. It's very brief, and I thought I would share it again now. It is from A Course in Miracles, and it starts out, I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. So I find that to be a very high prayer, and I thought I would share it with you all as we go into our conversation with Joan. I'm excited for you to meet her, as I am with all of our guests on Let's Start Healing podcast. So let's get started. Let's meet her and let's start healing. Welcome, Joan.
Hi, good seeing you.
It's great to see you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, God, it's my pleasure.
So, Joan, you've written 2 books. The first one I'm aware of, A Little Bit of Knowledge Couldn't Hurt. And the second one is The Shadow of My Life. So can you sort of sum up the 2 books for us?
Sum up my books. How much time do you have? The Little Bit of Knowledge Couldn't Hurt started out just, it's a book, but each chapter tells its own story. And the same with the second book. Each chapter is its own story. It's not something that needs to be read cover to cover. Mm-hmm. It might be talking about children or questions you never asked your mother. And I'm finding that people relate so much to what they're reading from my book, giving them permission to also feel their feelings too. Mm-hmm. It's funny how people wrapped up are self-absorbed, that it's their problems. They don't realize how many other people share it.
Right. We feel alone sometimes.
So the first page of my book talked about how I felt exposing myself and letting the world know about me, and how would they feel about me, or would they still like me then?
So there's, even though each chapter is a story, it's a story of an experience of yours.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example of one of the chapters?
Let's pick a chapter that we really, really like. Well, here, this is a good one here at the beginning. May I read this?
Oh, absolutely.
This book is for the child within and the woman who learned to nurture her. Forgiveness and unconditional love for the inner child, the child who seeks love, who seeks to be held, to feel warmth, to connect with another human. She is truth. She is the seeker. Come to me, the woman. Allow me to hold you and to rock you. Allow me into your heart. Trust me, for I know your heart. I am the one who knows of your innocence. Together, hand in hand, we will go forward. We have shed many a tear over our lost child. Feel elated that you have finally found her. We are the energy of the woman the child became. We are their strength. We are their comfort. We are their innocence, and we will treasure it, hold it, and release it back to them as we grow and as we step out into the world. Maybe the love we expected to receive was not forthcoming. We deserve to be loved, we deserve to know love, and we are never alone. We have sought approval, and it is not the approval of friends or family that we need to make us whole. It is the approval of our Creator and our beliefs in ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Was writing this book cathartic for you?
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Wow. And how so?
You know, it's interesting when you say that, about how cathartic. I have some friends who are survivors of the Holocaust, mm-hmm. and when they tell their story, it's cathartic for them because they're releasing it. They're letting go of what's inside of them. Mm-hmm. And I guess this is what the book was to me. It's letting go of what was inside of myself.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised? Did you say things you didn't expect? Like, did things come out of you didn't expect to?
Absolutely, absolutely, mm-hmm. absolutely. And I was sort of like, oh my God, wait till people read this. Oh my God, wait till people read this. And a lot of people read it, and I thought that it would be for a certain age group, a certain group, but some men had enjoyed reading it as well, and mm-hmm. that surprised me a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And especially for women, what you just read, I mean, that is so universal. That's something that, many women, we try to get in touch with that child within us, that purity, within us, and, believe in ourselves, and because we get all kinds of messages out in the world. So, wow. And your other book? The Shadow of My Life?
Shadow of My Life is similar, based on pretty much the same things. Life is not always what we want it to be. An attitude of gratitude, which I love. Mm-hmm. I am not a mistake.
What is that chapter about?
Birth.
birth. Tell us more.
I got to be careful with that one. My father, I was favorite child. He was my favorite parent, my father. But yeah, he used to tell me stories when I was a little kid, what he felt like when my mother gave birth to me as the second child. And the doctor said, "Mr. Friedman, you now have a very happy, healthy little baby girl." He says, and what he said, I'm not going to repeat on the microphone, but he was so surprised he thought it would be a boy. So I am not a mistake.
So did you grow up like that was sort of a seed in your consciousness?
Not really. It turned out I was going to be, I was a tomboy, and we used to do a lot of fishing together, so we were very, very close. But mistakes have an upside and a downside. The downside is not nearly as comfortable as the upside. In the early 90s, it goes on and on, you're writing about it, but yeah.
Wow. So what did you want to say in The Shadow of My Life?
Basically, a little bit more of a continuation of this chapter, because people then started to say to me, "Have you thought of a chapter for this? Have you thought of a chapter about this?" Another chapter was, "What are you saving it for?" And I remember when my mother passed away, my father says, "We have to get wine glasses. We have to do," not when she died, but shortly after. "We need to get wine glasses. We need to do this. We need to do that." And I says, "But we have wine glasses, and you don't drink." He says, "Yeah, but your mother only used them for special occasions." I says, "But she died, and if the glasses outlive us, I'm going to smash every one of them." So, and that's exactly the way. What are we saving it for?
You wanted to celebrate her too.
I have dishes from my mother that have the gold rim, and I put them in the dishwasher. And people say, "You shouldn't put them in the dishwasher. You're going to ruin the gold." I says, "If they die, they die."
What are you saving them for?
What are you saving it for?
Well, so tell me about your spiritual path and how you grew up, and were you, I know you grew up, you're Jewish, and how big was the faith in your household and your life growing up?
Basically, our Jewish to the core, believe it, but I'm basically a Reformed Jewish. I'm not Orthodox, though I'm very friendly with many Orthodox Jewish people.
What does Reformed Jewish mean?
I go out on Saturdays. Orthodox don't. They observe the Shabbos more carefully. I don't. But in my heart of hearts, I'm Jewish.
Right.
And I'm very proud of that, so I'm okay with that. You asked me another question. Go back to the question
Well, was your
asked.
faith very big in your house? Practiced in a big way in your home?
I believe my
up?
spirituality started when I was in Al-Anon more.
Okay. And were you a child or a teen or an adult?
An adult. My late husband, second husband, was an alcoholic, so I got very involved with Al-Anon. I learned about a higher power, which in my way I would call God, but like somebody may be praying for a tree, and if that tree is their God, that's their belief. So I learned how to believe in my own belief system about a God that I choose to call God. From Al-Anon, I got involved with neurolinguistics.
Neurolinguistics.
Yeah, NLP. And that was a beautiful transition in my life, because married to an alcoholic, you feel that you're worthless, you're this, that, and the other thing. But NLP brought me back worth. I became a different person with NLP.
What is that about?
Neurolinguistic, the language of the brain. But it's more than that. It's coming to peace with yourself. Like some people have done EST. Everybody does spirituality in their own way, in their own places. And I went to classes. I went for 30 days in Breckenridge, and I went to Utah. I mean, since 1991, I've been studying and writing books on NLP as much as I can and getting as much information as I can. It so has changed my life for the past 33 years. Wow. I'm a whole different person. I believe in myself. I believe in others. I have the right to say I'm sorry. I have the right to say I'm wrong. Where in the past I wouldn't do that, because, oh my God, I don't want to be wrong. It's embarrassing. If you said to me, "Did you read the book, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?" I'd say, "Oh, yeah, but I forgot what it was about." I never read the book. So now I can say, never heard of it.
Right.
And I feel proud. I'm proud. My kids are proud of me. I'm proud of my children. And that's something I'm proud of, because when you watch some families, they're not close.
That's true.
So I'm extremely grateful for the education I've had, that from Al-Anon, moving on to NLP, and being where I am today, and knowing you. I mean, just how life does its...
So Al-Anon helped you to release anguish that you felt.
It taught me it wasn't my fault.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered the first time I walked into an Al-Anon room, and I said, "Oh my God, I know everybody here." And I was so embarrassed to be there. And then I said, wait, they're here for the
They're
same
here.
reason I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an anonymity, it's an anonymous program, but
Right.
I respect that anonymity completely.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole life has been much about confidentiality and anonymity.
Right. So Al-Anon taught you that it wasn't your fault. And then can you share more about NLP and sort of the practice and what it introduced to you, and just to give us an awareness?
Oh, the small awareness might be you're trying to communicate with somebody close to yourself, and you're communicating with them, and they just don't understand what you're saying. You're trying to get a message across to them, and they're not getting it, and
Mm-hmm.
you're getting very frustrated, and you're starting to
You
speak
get
louder.
Yeah.
And speaking louder isn't going to make it clearer.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is some people are more kinesthetic. They feel more what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Some people hear what you're saying. Some people get the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, you have to start working with the people who you're close to react
Right.
to them.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're listening to me,
Mm-hmm.
or I know they got the picture when I was
Right.
describing it.
And you just affirmed to me so much how we're all, in one way or another, I feel like so many of us are just all alike, and we just have different names, because I 100%, 1,000% follow and understand what you're saying. And for me, it's empathy. Mm-hmm. That's what you're describing. And so, we just have different approaches to get to the same destination that we want to be.
Absolutely.
That we want to be at.
Also, when you're finished working with me, you're going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I want to see it. Listening to it doesn't mean that much to me as much as seeing
Visual.
the visual.
Yeah,
So I'm
yes.
more visual.
Well, I think a lot of people are
obviously-
visual,
and
yes.
Well, we all have all of the traits, but some
Yeah.
are dominant.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I totally understand. And so, share more about your spiritual path, in relation to Judaism and NLP, both of those, and how they blended together, and just how you incorporated them into your life through the years.
It was a step into life. It was, I don't know how to properly explain it. It was there.
Mm-hmm.
I just stepped into it. I was comfortable in it. I remember it was a class one night. One afternoon there was a class and we were doing role playing. And I said to the leader of the group, I said, "It's not working." I said, I failed at it. And then I looked at him and I started to cry and I says, "I was the failure." And he said to me, "Tonight I'm going to work on you." I said, "Uh-oh." And that night during an open session, he spoke to me. And I remember thinking, "God, I'm going to make him look bad. I'm going to make him look bad." And everybody in the audience laughed because he's the master of this whole program. I'm going to make him look bad? How's that for an ego? And he worked on me and worked on me and worked on me. And the tears rolled down my face, all over.
How did he work on you? What did he do or say?
Whatever NLP worked in that sense, it was just words and words and words and talking and just...
He kept probing you.
And when I sat down, I was like wiped out. I was wiped out. And how many people came over to me to thank me for sharing with the experience I went through because they've been through similar things. But that just opened up my heart.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my heart for so many years was closed off. I didn't trust. I didn't feel. So all of this just released it.
Was it a revelation in your role play that you felt like a failure, and that was a revelation that he started working with? Mm-hmm. It's something how we can put layers over that kind of a feeling, any kind of a pain, and then go out in the world and our actions really speak to that thing that's really down below, but we're disconnected from it.
It's sort of like going through your chakras.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is in the lower chakra.
Yes. And I look at it like going through the fire. It's not as bad. I mean, I don't like it when I have to do that, but it's not as bad as I think it's going to be by any means. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So do you have we talked a little bit before we came online, but what is your spiritual practice? Do you have a daily spiritual practice?
Daily.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I live my life and I do it that. I care about people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very caring person. At the same time, I've learned how to receive as well as to give.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a tough one because I'd rather do it myself type thing that most people have.
So you'd rather...
I can do it both ways.
You used to be better at giving than receiving?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take you to the airport. But me, no, I'll drive to the airport. Don't worry about me.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I can ask for favors now.
Mm-hmm.
And then being sick, that helped also.
Yes, I'd like to talk about that. So you came through cancer.
Yes.
And so what did that, and that was within 5 years, or you've been
I was diagnosed with cancer 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went through chemo.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of 6 weeks, 6 treatments of chemo, I had what was called chemo brain. So I lost all memory. And for almost 30 days, I had 24-hour help. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know if I liked you. I didn't know if I knew you.
And do you have no memory of that time, or you know of this because this is what you were told, or do you remember that time?
A combination.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it now,
Mm-hmm.
but I also remember some people that were there with me.
Uh-huh.
What's funny, and I laugh about it, is the first thing that came, and I had a lot of treatment, a lot of help, learned how to walk, learned how to talk, learned how to memory. If people said to me, one of the therapists would say to me, okay, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, I'm going to tell you a story, and then I want you to repeat back to me. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was Tuesday, and Adrienne came to see you, and she was sitting in your kitchen. Now, who did you see on Tuesday? And who did you see? Well, I saw Myrtle. And what day was it? It was Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Until I can finally come
Right.
back together with everything. When memory started coming back, thank you for the brain circulation.
Uh-huh.
The first thing that came back in long-term memory was driving. But I didn't know where I was going. So I took my daughter with me in the car, mm-hmm. and I drove, but she rode with me to see, and little by little things were coming back, and then I had to re-educate myself. So I'm going to Publix. So I drive to Publix, and I say, okay, I'm making a right turn to go to Publix. When I come home, I have to go left. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going up the aisle, and I turn down another aisle, and I figured if I come down and make another right, I'm going to be at the same aisle. So it's amazing how the brain will rework itself. Mm-hmm. It is utterly, utterly, utterly a God-given gift.
Yeah. Wow. And so what did you learn during that time, emotionally, spiritually? Like what?
Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Gratitude.
Thank you, God.
Gratitude.
I never took it upon myself that look what I did. Thank you, God. Mm-hmm. Thank you, God. Thank you, God.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. How did you, when you were diagnosed, what type of cancer was it?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, nobody in my family's ever had cancer. Well, this is not genetic.
Mm-hmm. And what were your thoughts? I mean, what were your fears at that time? Were you surprised when you got the diagnosis?
I was devastated. At that time, my daughter was in the Orthodox community for the Jewish holiday, and my son was home, but I didn't want to tell him without telling her, so I kept it a secret until after the holidays, what I could share with both of them. Mm-hmm. And they were both upset that I waited to tell them, but I needed to have both of them there. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they were devastated.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so I've got gratitude, an attitude of gratitude.
What are your what's the life lesson for you?
I'm still working on that. Honestly, I've been thinking about that myself. Uh-huh. I'm still here. I'm 83 years old. I'm grateful I'm here, and I'm grateful I'm in good condition, good health, etc., etc. What is my purpose? Is there still more for me to do? What is it I'm supposed to do? What is it? Give me a message to let me know what more there is for me to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, but is there something that you learned that, something that you have in complete clarity.
I've always felt there always has to be something more, and I'm never quite sure what that more is.
More to do or more that there is?
Both.
Wow.
More to do and more that is. Like I said, I have more questions than I have answers.
I think sometimes questions are good because they open us up. Sometimes they're good. Wow. So I like to ask 4 healing questions to guests that I'd like to ask you. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So if you could sit on the porch across from God, this relates to what we just said, and ask him 2 questions that he could give you a complete understanding of, what would they be?
Were you proud of me?
Mm-hmm.
That would be one. Were you proud of me? Did I achieve things in my life that put a smile on your face?
Mm-hmm.
That would be.
Mm-hmm. And the second question?
That pretty much is both. Yeah.
Did I put a smile on your face, and were you proud of me?
Yeah.
Because you want to know. And I mean,
It's parental. It's parental.
Oh. And what was your relationship like with both of your parents? I know you talked about your father for a moment.
I'm not sure I want to get into it.
Okay.
Just in case it gets aired somewhere and somebody else hear it, whatever. I'll share a lot. But there are some things that I feel are best not said.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand.
Maybe when the microphone is off, I'll share it with you.
Okay. So, well, what would you like to impart wisdom? What kind of wisdom would you like to impart to your generation and to the younger generation?
Basically, it's an expression, I think, from Al-Anon. Walk the walk, don't talk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that lecturing and talking and speaking and lecturing, talking and speaking is not helpful as much as show me the way, walk my way, or walk the way I walk the walk. You know, we have one mouth and 2 ears.
1000% true. Walk the walk. Was that something you came into to doing, or that's how you've always been?
That came in, I believe it was either Al-Anon, Naranon, or an LP, but I remember Walk the Walk. Mm-hmm. And I like that. When I was also doing docenting at the Holocaust Museum, kids don't want to be lectured to. They don't want to be lectured to. Mm-hmm. So tell them a story.
Yeah.
Give them something to relate to.
Right.
A story of, and then they can understand, and they can feed you feedback.
Mm-hmm. Right. They receive it
So
and learn
tell
it.
the story, exactly.
Yeah. Do you consider yourself a seeker or a healer?
Both.
In what sense for each?
I understand a lot of things within people. I mean, the healing is there, and I mean, I can't explain it. I've taken courses in that as well with healing. I've done Rohan clearing. I've worked at psychic abilities. I've worked with many people. But I'm always looking. I'm always looking for more. Like I told you, I want to get involved with this networking and see what that's about.
What is Rohan healing?
Not touching the body, but working with healing.
Oh, like Reiki.
Like Reiki, but different. And it's sort of like feeling the energy within, because we're all made of energy.
Right.
So it was working, and I found that very, very comforting. It's just, if somebody has something, your head hurts or something, you can work with the hands without ever touching. So that's a healing process.
I've done that probably more than once, but what's coming to mind is there's a place in Roswell called the Ahemke Center, and during an exercise, it was a room, and there were like maybe 3 or 4 massage tables, and one person would be on each massage table, and then there'd be, maybe 4 people standing around each table, and we would do that. We would put our hands, and we would feel where a lot of the energy we put our hands over each other, over the person on the table to see where the energy was. Real powerful.
It is.
Yeah.
I remember there was one woman who had terrible, terrible back pain. She was with NLP, and they were from Brazil. And she was lying on the bed, and I was working on her, and her brother was standing at the foot of the bed. And she says, I know she's touching me. I know she's touching me. I can feel her hands. And he says, I'm telling you, she's not touching you. I mean, it was so. And she did ear things where she would work with people's ears and be able to read things. I mean, it's fascinating what the body could give forth. I also believe in kinesiology.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that.
You try it on yourself?
Yeah. No, you can do that?
Yes.
Or are you talking, now, kinesiology, are you talking about like the movement?
Yes.
Or
it's asking your body questions and getting answers.
Yes. You know what? I tried that the other day because it's been years since I've done that or it was introduced to me. But so tell people what that is.
I remember a chiropractor did that for me first, holding the hand as if, I'm going to ask you questions, and if it's true, your arm is stiff, and if it isn't,
right, basically.
So I figured, how do I do this myself? And I was somewhere out California, or maybe at a class, and we were sitting on a bench, and I said, I'd love to do kinesiology, but it's difficult to do it with my own arm. She said, do it yourself. So what she did is she showed me to make a circle with my index finger and my thumb, and then take my pinky, and then use this as my teaching. So
put your pinky in between.
Show me a yes.
Yeah.
And for me, that worked. For some people, it doesn't seem to, but it works. And I don't ask questions about you or them, my neighbors across the street. That pertains to me. I might say to myself, did you take your medicine this morning? Yep. Okay, I did. And I did.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, and I've spoken to a few doctors that I go to, an internist, my yearly checkup, and I was telling her about kinesiology, and she said, really, you do too? It's amazing how many doctors are aware of it, and sports doctors are aware of it. Kinesiology works. And what I love about it, it's me working within my own body.
Yeah. And I think it makes so much more sense to me now than 10 years ago when I first learned about it, because an affirmation is going to be much stronger than something that's a negative, something that's a no. So, yeah, our body is going to respond.
What's interesting about negatives also is if you're going to use a sentence, don't use a negative, because you abort everything that you said prior to.
Yes.
Eliminate the word but. I'm going to be on time, but no, then you're not going to be on time. But the but just right.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for saying that, because that just brings more to my awareness, because I'm really focusing on what I say these days. I'm realizing that if I say I'm not going to do something, that's creating a likelihood that I will do it.
You canceled it. You canceled it. Yeah. I'm planning on it. My intention is to do, because energy.
Exactly.
Intent carries more energy. So my intention is to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I had I met someone briefly about a month ago, and he kept saying these negative things about himself, and basically stalkerish things. I'm not this, I'm not that, stalkerish things. And so at first I was just like, oh, whatever. But, after a while I said, maybe I should just believe this person, even though they're saying that they're not this, maybe I should just, be concerned that maybe they are this thing. So, that ended that friendship, but it was a real lesson for myself about how not to be and how I can manifest something.
Walk the walk.
Because I saw how that person manifested something with me.
Right.
So I see how I could do the same thing, and that's something I want to avoid.
If somebody is selfish and they go, I'm selfish, you go, no, you're not. If they're selfish, they're selfish. By saying, no, you're not, does not work.
Exactly. Is there anything that you think, I know you're trying to figure this out still, and I think that's
still yet and always.
Yeah, which I think is a wonderful thing. I think that it's a way we should be our entire lives. But I wonder if there's anything that you think, and maybe you've done it already that you think that God has called you to do?
I'm sure that as long as we're on Earth and have lifetimes, I'm sure there's things for us to do. It's not a question of sitting in front of a television or playing a game. I do enjoy my playtimes. I have times that during the day I like to be busy. I'm a people person. Streisand songs, people who need people. I need people, no question about it. And at night it gets very lonely. And there are times I may cry myself to sleep. And I give myself permission for it. And that's probably, invariably I say to God, every time I do the prayer, why am I always crying when I'm doing it?
I think that's healing. I think crying is healing. It's a release. Is there anything that you think God calls you to do in service to others?
I have done it.
Which is?
I've done many things in service of God, which in Jewish they call it a mitzvah, a gift. And there are some mitzvahs that people cannot thank you for. And that's a special one, and I was involved in that too.
Does that mean it's anonymous, or what does that mean?
It is. What it is, let me explain this and see if I can get this clear. Part of the Jewish tradition is all aspects of life is important. Birth is important, life is important, death is important. And when a woman dies, and usually you go to the funeral home, etc., etc. So we're Jewish, so we go to the Jewish home. And in the Jewish home, we have a group of women called the Tahara group, Sheva Kedusha, and we cleanse the body. We don't share it with the family. We don't say, by the way, I did your mother. And you don't work with men. Women work with women. And there's no embarrassment. I mean, with the body's there. The sheet is covered. Everything is done. And we don't talk about each other. So what did you do today?
Of course, it's sacred.
Exactly. So we may take the polish off the nails, and we wash the body, then we dress it in the shroud, and we get it ready to put in the box, and then the box is put into another room, and somebody sits with it until the funeral. So the body is never alone.
Oh, wow.
And when you're working on that, like I said, you cannot thank anybody for it, which is a blessing. That's a favor you're given that nobody knows about. And yet when you're working with it, you get the feeling that the body is helping you. And it's amazing. You can almost feel the soul of the person being in the room with you. And that's something that's it's something you feel. It's like faith. It's something you have to feel. And I'm so grateful to belong to a religion that feels that way. And even when somebody in the Jewish religion dies, you sit Shiva. Sometimes for a week, sometimes for a month, sometimes for 2 or 3 days. And I feel bad for Christians who, when they bury somebody, go to work the next day and they don't have a chance to mourn.
Well, so I always thought of sitting Shiva, not having clarity, but I always thought of sitting Shiva as kind of the wake. That I would call a wake, say in my faith. So it might be a week between the time that a family member dies and we have the funeral.
Do you remember my friend Minnie? Minnie started out as the housekeeper for me. And she was with me for 42 years.
Okay.
She was my best friend. She was a spiritual sister. We both knew each other's life. We shared. We went through everything. She died in 2016, and I was given the pleasure of speaking at her funeral. And I just spoke about her life, celebration of her life.
Sure.
And to this day, I still miss her.
I can imagine. That's a long time. That's a long time.
And she started out as a housekeeper, but ended up as a dear. We had lunch. We talked and talked. We discussed politics. We discussed you name it. We talked about it. Minnie died in 2016. She just had a son pass away this past year, and her daughter is the only one still alive. So I had gone to the house when her brother died. And she says, why do people say to me, you're the last one, you're the last one, you're the last one? I figure that's a horrible thing to hear that, you're the last one. So I said to her, I'm going to share a story with you. I said, I have a Holocaust survivor who wrote a book, and it said, somebody must live to tell the story. She says, so you're living to tell the story. And she thanked me. And I was grateful, not that she thanked me, I was grateful that I had the knowledge of that book.
Right. To
And
share, to
I
impart.
called the speaker who wrote the book, and I told her how the book came to help somebody else.
It does. We affect everyone. Yeah, the way we started mentioning that was I was saying that I think of, tell me if this is different, because from sitting Shiva, because I think of, say, if I had a family member who passed away today and then the funeral ends up being a week from now. So between now and that time, people are coming over, all the time. People are coming over, paying their respects, being with the family. It's just a rotating door from now until the funeral. And then also within that time, and it's changing now because sometimes wakes are just held on the day of the service before the service. But traditionally, there might be like 2 nights of a wake. And is that similar? I mean, that's what I equate to sitting Shiva.
It's similar. But in the Jewish religion, they bury within 24 hours unless there's an extenuating circumstance waiting for a family member.
And then you do the Shiva after the burial?
Right.
Right.
But usually we bury within
Gotcha.
almost immediate. Where a wake sometimes... It may take a while, or sometimes they'll have a memorial for somebody a month after the death.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your perception or knowing of God? Like, what is, for you personally?
My personal feeling about what is God, who is God, how is God, not a man, not a woman. My wannabe belief is there's a humongous energy, and that energy to me is God. And I live within that energy.
Would you describe that energy as loving, or sometimes wrathful or punishing, or?
I don't feel God in any way would punish, of course, unless circumstances are such from somebody. It's sort of like you were working with a child, God working with me. So he may be displeased at something I've done. And, to be honest with you, in my past, I was not perfect. I made plenty of mistakes in my past, and hopefully I'm living a better life today than I did. So I think God will forgive me some of the mistakes I've made in the past.
Sure.
And I live within that energy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes I feel, in fact, this happened to me this morning. I feel the energy of God inside, like in my heart. I physically feel the energy if I'm praying and talking to God, and I'm being extremely. I don't want to say extremely, but if I'm really sincerely being authentic, I'll feel the energy of God in my body.
Absolutely.
Do you feel that too?
I have an incident. My daughter was visiting her brother in California, and she took sick. So I flew out there for an emergency because she wasn't coming home. And I was a nervous wreck. And while sitting on the plane, all of a sudden I had this feeling of calmness just overwhelm me. And I knew everything was going to be okay.
And it was. Yeah. So that's leading me to my next question, which, separate from that, because that would be a good example. Is there a time that you received a blessing that you had nothing to do with that coming about? It was completely God's doing.
It's funny. Can I think of something? No, but after you leave, I'll probably think of 4 things. Yes. My children were always a blessing. That was.
Yeah.
But I think I've done more not that I've done more blessings for God. I don't mean it that I'm giving God blessings, but
sure. You want to please God,
yeah,
of course.
And I remembered as a child, I never had a Hebrew name, and I was friendly with some of the rabbis in the Orthodox community, and I said, I never had a Hebrew name, and they said, well, if you've had a Hebrew name, you can't change your name because it's already written that your name is. I said, as far as I know, I never had a Hebrew name, ever. So then the rabbis and the rabbi's wife are trying to figure out what name I want. They're coming up with all kinds of names. And finally I said, what would be the name for Earth Mother? And she says, Chava. And that became my Hebrew name.
I love that. Hava.
Eve, Earth Mother, Eve.
Eve. Oh.
Earth Mother.
I love that.
But I didn't know it was Eve. I just thought, Earth Mother.
Yeah.
And they came up with the answer, and it fit like a glove.
Wow.
So I had a ceremony, and I was named.
Did
so
you?
my Hebrew name is Chava.
What was the ceremony?
The Orthodox rabbi took me to Temple Sinai to the Reformed rabbi, because and they performed it, and I was.
What did they do? I mean, what did they do?
Words were said, prayers were said. It's not like a christening, but
yeah,
there's a christening, so it's just different methods.
That's beautiful. And so Hava is, it means Earth Mother, and it is Eve.
Well, basically,
in Hebrew.
it's Earth Mother, but it's Earth Mother, and Adam and Eve. So
right.
But I mean, I didn't know what Eve, and I just said,
sure,
Earth Mother, because this is me. That's who I am, Earth Mother.
Well, Joan, thank you so much.
I'll tell you, I truly have enjoyed this. It's like having a conversation. I know you're not a stranger to me. And I'm so comfortable, and everything is just flowing so beautifully.
I'm happy. This doesn't have to be our final conversation
on this
podcast. I mean, we can talk again.
Good.
So I really enjoy it.
And we can meet for coffee like we used to.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our podcast YouTube channel. Remember also to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and send me that email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com. Let's start healing.